Welcome to the Cybersecurity Matters podcast, a series of interviews with key leaders throughout the industry, all brought to you by the cybersecurity team at Newco, a specialist global recruitment and executive search firm.
Welcome to the Cybersecurity Matters podcast. Your hosts today are me, Harry Baldwin, and Daisy Steele, two members of the cybersecurity team here at Newco. And we're delighted to be joined today by Ashish Shah, co-founder of Andromeda Security. Ashish is a product and go-to-market executive with over 20 years experience across startups and large enterprises. Currently, he's the co-founder and chief product officer at Andromeda Security. Prior to Andromeda, he led product management, customer engagement, and business operations at Avi Networks, which was acquired by VMware. Ashish holds a master's in electrical engineering from Stanford and an MBA from UC Berkeley School of Business. Welcome to the show, Ashish.
Thank you. Very excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Today we'll be covering all things you, people, and the cybersecurity industry as a whole. But to get us started, we always love to ask people the same question. How did you first get into the cybersecurity industry?
All right. So maybe a little bit of unusual from other cybersecurity, but the way we got started, the way my career has evolved in general is where is the next hard problem to solve? So at Avi, we were solving software load balancing and web application firewall, DDoS, bot management. So that aspects of application and traffic aspects of cybersecurity. Before that, I was focusing on data center technologies. And so Avi was the first entry into cybersecurity from a load balancing web application firewall point of view. As we started Andromeda, one of the reasons we started Andromeda was that we saw there was a bigger, larger problem to be solved around identity and identity security. And so that further took me into the larger cybersecurity space.
Yeah, interesting. Were you someone that when you were younger played with computers? Were you reading about cybersecurity all the time? Or was it something that you kind of fell into?
Not cybersecurity. When I was growing up, cybersecurity wasn't there as much, right? Computers were relatively early. I mean, I was working on computers from high school and college days, but I think the whole cybersecurity world was too early for that. It was, I think, more about what are the interesting problems to be solved. I did take in a grad school. I did take a security class that was more theoretical around cryptography and so on. That was kind of the first introduction to the whole security space. But it's really in the workspace as you saw interesting problems to be solved as technologies evolved from client server to mobile technologies to internet and cloud and so on. I think the problems evolved in where I went where there were interesting, challenging problems to be solved, where I could add value, of course, right? If I couldn't add value, then I didn't want to solve those problems.
Yeah, very interesting. And we're looking forward to diving into in a bit more detail about you, what motivates you, your career, and some of your achievements. And for that, I will hand over to Daisy.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. That was really interesting. Love to hear kind of how people get into the industry. Now let's focus on your career and some of the key lessons you've learned along the way. What or who has been the biggest influence on your career?
Great question. I think in general, I mean, there are multiple factors. There is no one factor, right? But I think a big thank you goes to the mentor or mentors in your life, because a lot of times you are at crossroads, and I have been at crossroads multiple times on what's next for me. I've solved this problem. I have become good at it. I think in general, there is a principle of 3, which is in any job, any career, you stay at least 3 years. First year, you're learning. Second, you're executing and really giving back. And third year, you are training others and making sure you're making the next generation ready. So at least 3 years in any role, right? But and longer as needed. So I've been at crossroads at multiple times, and I think my mentors have played a big role throughout my career. I started my career as a software developer, writing code and then defining and designing software. And I moved into product management a few years into my career. And one of the reasons was I was trying to figure out what to do next. And there are mentors who helped me make a decision on what to do. And I generally have an action bias. So when in doubt, do, because you'll learn that way rather than just do analysis paralysis. And so again, mentors have helped in career transitions as I move from software development to product management, as I move from big companies to small companies, have I taken multiple responsibilities. So I think in general, mentors have played a big role in my career.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice to kind of notice, obviously, the mentor and how influential that has been in your career. We see that with a lot of executives that we speak to, and it's a great part of the industry. My next question would be, what achievement are you most proud of, Ashish?
So I think there is no one thing, but in general, again, at the top level, the way you think about it is what you have been able to achieve, right? And contribute back. And if you boil it down, it boils down to execution. So everybody has ideas, but execution is hard. Execution takes time, patience. And so I think for me so far, I mean, we are very early in our journey of Andromeda Security, and I'm very proud of where we have in the last 2 years, and there's a long way to go. But before our previous journey at Avi, when I joined the organization, we were about 20, 25 people. And when we exited, we were over 300 people when we were acquired by VMware, starting from pre-product days to over 1,000 customers by the time we exited with over 100 million in revenue. So I think that journey, that multi-year journey where we have seen ups and downs, we have solved hard problems, we have seen challenges, we have overcome challenges as a team. So I think that's what I'm proud of, which is the execution of the company journey that we have had at Avi, from very early days into where we are today. And I'm very proud to say the product is still up and thriving, and its new home at VMware, which is now at Broadcom. So yeah, that's what I would say. I think perseverance, patience, attention to detail, taking a long-term view, focusing on addressing the problems as they come. I think that's what matters, and that's what defines success in the long term.
Yeah, and that definitely links onto my next question as well, which is, what is it actually like running a startup?
Yeah. So this is, I've had multiple startup in my life, multiple startups. Avi was the big one where I was very early and all the way to the end. Andromeda is the first one where I've co-founded, and it's a lot of fun and it's a lot of challenge. As I said earlier to the previous questions, it's all about the execution, right? You start with an idea, nothing else. You start with an idea with a set of team members, and you develop on that. You start working on developing the product, talking to customers, getting feedback, actually starting to deliver products, working with early customers, then production customers, then how you grow the product and mature as the organization, mature as the product, mature as a company. I think again, it's there's ups and downs. Again, I'm kind of a person where I want to wake up in the morning and be excited about the problems I want to solve. And that's the reason, frankly, I've been in startups more often than large organizations, because as an individual, whether you're a founder, early employee, or otherwise, your contributions matter. Everybody's contribution has an impact on whether the company will do well or not. And so having that eye on the ball on, okay, what is the most important thing you want to handle today? There are 20 different things in a startup that you want to do, but how do you prioritize them? How do you figure out what is the most important thing now that has the biggest impact, and what can wait until tomorrow? But then tomorrow you need to make the decision again and reprioritize and go. So I think you always start with a vision, and I think vision is what drives you. I'm in general an optimistic, positive-minded person. So when in doubt, I look for, okay, the good things will happen, but you have to make it happen. It's not going to be happenstance. It's not going to be just luck. You have to create your own luck. So how do you combine that vision, that positiveness, positivity, that optimism with day-to-day execution? Don't get bogged down by setbacks that you will get. You will get of different kinds. on a day-to-day basis. But then how do you overcome them as you go through these startups? There is no, as a founder especially, the buck stops with you as a founding team, right? In a large organization, well, that's not my problem. Somebody else will take care of this larger issue. Well, in a startup, that doesn't let the buck stops with you. Whatever good is happening, well, you share with the team, but whatever challenges that you're dealing with, you have to handle them. So how do you do that on a daily basis with keeping your head high, with marching ahead? I think that's the most challenging, and I think also the fun part. So I would do it all over again, because it keeps you, it wakes up in the morning with that energy and excitement that says, yes, I've got to take care of this, and I will.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And also some amazing advice there for anyone looking to start a startup. You mentioned kind of things like resilience, but what business skills do you think are most important for a cybersecurity entrepreneur?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you repeat, if you don't mind?
What skills are most important for a cybersecurity entrepreneur?
Okay. So I think it's a combination of a set of general skills and a set of domain-specific skills. And I think that's true in any industry, right? So what I mean by that is, again, in cybersecurity is a very technical space. So you need to know, you need to have deep technical expertise, whether in you or in the team that you're part of, right? Again, you start a company, you start a startup as a team usually, and as a team, you need to make sure that you have enough domain expertise, enough execution expertise, enough go-to-market expertise, and in general, organizational leadership, organizational execution expertise. So I think it's a combination. One person will not have all of the above, so that's how you assemble a team to be able to do that. But as an individual, if you're trying to get into the space, from a skills point of view, let's say you want to be on the technical side of cybersecurity. I think you need to be a domain expert at whatever area you want to focus on, and also have sufficient breadth. I'm sure you have heard of a T kind of skill set, right? Breadth for the most part, and one depth. I've actually heard another version of that. It's called a pie, which is breadth with two depth areas. One very deep and maybe one slightly less, like a pie, a Greek letter. Those are kind of things that's helpful, right? You can't be just one or the other. You can't be just a generalist. You can't be just a specialist. I think you need to have at least one area of specialization where you're the domain expert, where you're the go-to person. You can add immediate value. At the same time, you need to have the breadth of what else is happening. What are the adjacent areas? What are the areas in which this area of focus get enhanced or replaced? So I think that's how I think about it. And like, we can take a specific example. For example, in identity security that we focus on, right? It actually covers multiple areas. Identity security is most relevant today in cloud and SaaS space. So you definitely need to have understanding of how identity works, what's authentication, what's authorizations, what's permissions management, lifecycle management, what's human, non-human identities, etc. But you also need to understand how it's relevant in cloud and SaaS with automation and with DevOps versus how it was on premises. How is it different? So having that broader understanding of the larger ecosystem is important. Similarly, AI is everywhere. How does AI going to help with identity security? And how it's going to make it harder because now attacks are becoming more sophisticated and more frequent. So coming back to my earlier point, you need to have a domain expertise in whatever cybersecurity area you pick on, but at the same time, you do need to have the breadth of the adjacent areas, because only then you can make a more holistic, more a broad kind of decisions on a day-to-day basis. So that's how I would approach it.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I love your answers to all those questions there. Really inspirational. And as Daisy said, great advice to people entering the industry, founders, and yeah, great to hear a bit more about your experience in general. I'd love for us to move on to the topic that makes this industry tick, if you like, and that's people. The security industry, has a real sense of community about it. But the kind of people and talent landscape is constantly changing. In your view, what are the talent topics that you feel need addressing the most?
Good question. So I think you're right. I think security industry is very trust oriented. So which means people oriented. Like people want to associate themselves with other people who they can trust, right? That's true about careers. That's true about selling to customers or buying from vendors. I think it's all about trust. And I think I've been very happy to see that it's not just trust at technology level, but and trust at people level in terms of career development, giving advices, giving mentorship. There are so many forums all the way from CISO levels who need their peer community support down to the practitioner level. So yes, I think the industry is very well positioned that way. And there are a lot of organizations which do career development and technology development and so on. I think two things I would say. One is the obvious one, which is we continue to increase the knowledge transfer, the education, in the security industry. But I think there's a little bit more fundamental thing, which is security is more foundational. I think we need to educate everybody in the enterprise on security, right? This notion of shift left, right? I think it's shift left for security education, right? And we've seen that, right? Your security needs to be part of product design from day one. That's where application security comes in, right? You need to be part of your infrastructure. It needs to be part of your compliance, right? So security is pervasive. It's not just one function. Yes, it has to have a security function in the organization, but I think it's also a horizontal layer that needs to go across different sets of employees and functions. And so even from developing skill set point of view, which was your question, I think security education, it has to be foundational, whether it's taught at the colleges or on the job training. It has to become more natural. I think you need to start thinking. If you start thinking like an attacker or a hacker, you can start expecting where the potential vulnerabilities are, and having that mindset helps you build better products and build better processes. So that's what I would, which is the skill set that we need to develop is, in addition to having deep expertise in training people on different domain areas, is having that more fundamental security mindset throughout the employee base, throughout the organization.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And your kind of point on education and foundational knowledge is one that you can definitely draw into this next question as well. We hear it all the time, both through podcasts that we listen to, but also in our direct work in recruitment, is this, supposed talent shortage in cybersecurity. Some people we've had on have felt, there isn't a talent shortage. It's just the hiring managers looking for two specific things. And some people have gone, yes, absolutely, there is fundamentally a talent shortage. Firstly, do you agree that there is? And what measures do you think the industry can take to tackle an issue like that?
Right. I think the way cybersecurity has evolved is extremely fast, right? And whatever was cutting edge, if you will, has moved very quickly over the last few years, right? The products have become more sophisticated. The attacks have become more sophisticated. The types of technology that has evolved at such a rapid pace that anybody can feel that there is not enough expertise out there to handle something. So I think there is some truth out to that there is some shortage more in the sense that technology is evolving much faster than we can keep up. So how do you address that? I think you go with the fundamentals, right? Everything in general, I go to the first principles, right? You have to have at least a basic generalist security mindset. And to develop this skill further, I think to my earlier question, if you have that foundational generalist security mindset, and if you identify those people who are better at that than the others, then you pick those and then develop the domain-specific expertise. So we as an industry needs to do a better job of making the foundational layer solid and maybe even deeper than what it is today, so that there is a larger pool of people who can be then further developed into specific domain areas. And like anything, it's about first principles. Anything can be learned. So you need to give opportunities to people who have shown that mindset, that attitude, have that the fundamentals to learn new things. They will learn. So the way to develop this or address the skill set shortage is first democratize the foundational security knowledge, focus on the first principles, and then within the organization or within the industry groups, develop specific domain-specific expertise. It'll lift everybody's boats.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think your point on motivation, and people have to be willing to go and learn and passionate about it and motivated to learn more. I think that's a really important one as well. But no, really good to hear all your points and thoughts on those areas. Now we're going to move on to our industry topic that matters. And we've got a few questions here, some about identity security, Andromeda security, and non-human identity, lots of areas to cover, but would love to start with Andromeda Security. What inspired you to start the business, and why did you decide to focus on AI-driven identity security?
Right. So there are multiple questions in there. Let me take one at a time. So we were, most of the founding team came from Avi Networks, which I referred to earlier, right? And we saw at Avi, so we built the product initially for on-prem, and then as our customers moved to cloud in the mid-2010s, we partnered with our customers and developed Avi for cloud. The architecture suited itself as a distributed architecture. And we saw that, unlike on-prem, cloud had a different set of challenges around permissions management, not just for us at Avi in terms of our SaaS service, but also our customers who were trying to move to cloud. And so we knew that that was one of the harder problems. So as we were leaving leaving Avi to say, okay, what's the next problem to solve? What's the next hard problem? This was our top of our minds, is one of the top two problems we wanted to solve. And then one of our customers was PayPal at Avi, one of the early days. And they moved from on-prem to cloud while we helped them also develop Avi and deploy Avi for on-prem and enter to cloud. And the person who ran their cloud security operations and cloud center of excellence was our customer at Avi. And so we bounced off ideas around this identity and permissions management. And he liked it so much that he joined us as one of our co-founders. So that was the best validation we had, which is, and he was an advisory board of AWS and GCP, and he knew what his peers were doing. He was trying to build a problem. He's trying to build a solution similar to what we're building at scale at Andromeda, or we're thinking about building at scale at Andromeda, and says, yep, this is a real problem. He validated it. We talked to a bunch of customers, lots of CISOs, and they validated the idea. And so that's what inspired us to start addressing the problem. And then we can go deeper into what's the approach we have taken, but we wanted to address this problem from an architecture point of view, not a point solution point of view. And we have done that in the past at Avi. Before that, most of the team was at Cisco, building large-scale switching platforms. And what we saw here at in the identity space was it was a fragmented space. So first of all, identity security or identity is one of the biggest attack vectors today, especially in cloud and SaaS, where there is no physical perimeter. Depending on the stats, between 65 and 80% of all breaches have identity in the common. I saw one more stat, which is 93% of enterprises have had at least 2 identity-related breaches in 2023, 2024. So it's not if, it's when you'll get compromised. And we realize that what it's in your control as an enterprise is the attack surface, which is the permissions. And unfortunately, 95% of all identities are overprivileged. So that's the problem with the identity breach today, which is the large attack surface. Well, when we double click into that, we saw that it's not just a security problem, it's an operations problem, it's a compliance problem. You have too many manual processes, you have too much rubber stamping on approvals going on, there are too many fragmented tools, frankly. And that's not only operationally expensive, it's also ineffective because you're solving siloed problems. So we took on Andromeda to solve this holistically, as I said earlier, through a data-centric approach where we ingest data from different sources, build a data lake, and then run our own machine learning models and go from there. So long story short, it's what we saw earlier at our customers, got validation from our customers, and took our enterprise architectural building roots of solving hard problems at scale and started Andromeda.
Really interesting. And we've noticed there's been so much investment, funding, and growth within the identity space. So it's great to get a bit of insight into the problems you see within that space in general and where you guys come in. Another kind of double question, if you like, but would love to especially hear about how AI is helping you guys in this. What are the biggest threats in identity security today, and how is AI helping to combat those?
Okay, let's start with the first one. What are the biggest threats today, right? So if you look at the first principles level, you have identity is the perimeter in cloud, which means if identity is compromised, your host. There's explosion in identities, human, but also especially non-human identities. And unlike on-prem, you have 15, 20,000 permissions in each of the environments, right? So this is a very complex matrix of assigning people to roles and permissions and so on. And if you do it humanly, by hand, through manual processes, you will make mistakes and you will have overprivileges. So the first, in terms of the first challenge, is just the complexity of permissions management. Combine that with the sophistications that the attackers have with the AI tools, you will have more frequent attacks, more sophisticated attacks. Now, these attacks cannot all be prevented through better authentication. We focus a lot on MFA and passwordless for the right reasons, and we should continue to do that. But a lot of the attacks bypass these things through social engineering or credential compromise and so on. So it's like defense in depth. You have to manage entitlements so that assuming you have to have this, there's a notion called assume breach mindset, which means assume you are breached. What can you do to protect yourself? With that mindset, how do you do least privilege? How do you do zero trust for identities? How do you do just-in-time privilege access and so on? So that's on the challenges side. There is more fundamental challenge that exists, which I alluded to earlier, which is there are so many siloed tools that the enterprises have to cobble together. There are PAM tools and IGA tools and NHI tools and threat detection tools for identities and so on. It's very difficult operationally to make them effective and so on. So what can help here? And then how does AI help here? What helps here is fundamentally putting all the data in a single place and then getting context out of that. So calculate risk, get context to behavioral analysis, see what actually every identity is doing. Use that context, use that behavioral models, use that risk to now automate your IAM operations in an intelligent fashion. That is the fundamental way in which you can address this complexity and the larger set of risk that we're going to see in identity space. So that's the approach we've taken, which is putting all the data in a single place, in a single data lake, and not just configuration and attributes data, but activity information, behavioral information, build models on top of it, and then now automate IAM operations intelligently. Now you avoid manual errors. Now you avoid the complexity. Now you can detect and mitigate your attacks faster. Now you can achieve the zero trust for identities, so through least privilege. You can automate just-in-time privilege access based on context. You can achieve security and agility. This is where AI can help because AI, different machine learning models. It's not about just Gen AI. Gen AI has its space in terms of session summarization and so on. But there's a larger machine learning and AI space because if once you have good data, you can run models on top of it. And that's where AI can help in terms of identifying behavioral anomalies, identifying clusters of identities or people who are doing something similar, and making sure that if something goes outside of that cluster, that's an anomaly. Identifying the NHIs tied to human identities and so on.
Yeah.
Risk models and so on. So that's where I think AI can help automatically or intelligently automate your operations.
Honestly, it's fascinating to hear you talk about it. And there's a couple of things I wanted to ask about off the back of that, and also seen you guys talk about quite a lot on your website. You've spoken in the past about human and non-human identities in cybersecurity. Now, we're experts in recruitment within cybersecurity. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, and some of our listeners might not be too. Could you explain the difference between human and non-human identities in security, and maybe a bit about what kind of maybe problems or challenges or thoughts that should create from an identity security perspective in general?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So human identities are human users, you, me, Daisy, where we do operations. Let's say we spin up a VM in AWS, or we access a database. You're doing it by on your own, right? That's a human user. And you log in through SSO, through your IDP. You might have local accounts for break glass, etc. Right? That's all a human user. Non-human machine identities is used by usually a piece of software or a cloud service or an application without human intervention directly. So they are, let's think of a simple thing as an API token, or it could be a service account in AWS, where through a script, or it could be a Lambda function, executing something else. And for that, it needs to log into something else, authenticate itself, do the operation based on the permissions it has. That's your non-human identity in general. I'm trying to simplify things here, right? So
Thank you.
The way to think about this is that a few things. First of all, the life cycle and accountability of these two are intertwined. Non-human identities don't exist in vacuum. Somebody created them. Somebody manages them. You need to have an owner, somebody who's accountable for that assigned, right? So the life cycles are intertwined. Also, if I leave the organization, all the NHIs that I owned or managed have to be either deleted if they're no longer in use because I'm gone and I was the only one using it, or if they were shared by somebody else, then they have to be reassigned to a different owner and rekeyed. Because unlike human identities, which is an SSO with MFA, there is no such authentication mechanism for non-human identities. It's usually key, access key, which if I have it, even if I leave the organization, I can still go back and access my cloud, usually. So I need to tie in the life cycle of key rotation, et cetera, to the human life cycle. And that's one of the reasons why we believe that they can't be solved in isolation. They have to be solved together. Also, there are a couple of key differences between human and non-human, but there are a couple of things that are identical. So in human identities, you have a directory service, IDP, Okta, Entra ID, Ping, etc., right? Google Workspace. Non-human identities doesn't have a centralized directory. It's distributed. It's in cloud. It's in SaaS applications. It could be your on-prem AD, external identities. So discovery and inventory is different and a little bit more challenging for NHIs than human identities. The life cycle is slightly different, right? For humans, you have a join, move, leave. For NHIs, it's usually created identity, created credentials, rotate the credentials, maybe vault it, and then delete when it's gone. And there are NHIs which don't have credentials. They're keyless. That's a case. What's common is entitlement management, permissions management, and governance. Whether it's human identity or non-human identities, what you can do is defined by what permissions you have, which means your attack surface in case of a compromise is defined by the permissions you have. So maintaining least privilege, making sure that you don't have anything more than what you need, making sure you're active and not doing something that's abnormal. It's common between both. Governance for compliance agents is required for both. So why have separate tools when a lot of the things that you need to do are common? And by the way, the risks and life cycles are intertwined to begin with. that's one of the reasons why we decided to solve this as a holistic solution. Now, there is an interesting observation, and then I want to address the topic of AI agents because that's a lot in conversation. So one observation is that the NHIs usually do things predictably. Either they do something or not do something because they're used by automation tools. Humans are more rather less predictable. Once in a while, I do one operations. Once in a month, I do something else. And that's a behavioral pattern. And it helps in certain ways where in humans, you can do just-in-time privilege access for infrequent operations or risky operations and so on. Where do AI agents come in? Technically, from a pure definition point of view, AI agents are non-human. They're not human. They're machine identities. But behaviorally, they're going to act more like humans because they're acting on behalf of humans. They are doing things more unpredictably. So they straddle both NHI and HI space. And that's one of the reasons why we believe that solving the human and non-human identities together allows us to better address the threat that's coming and the challenges of identity security from an AI agent point of view. And it's an evolving space. I think we are still early on that space, but I think it'll be an important problem to solve as we go on the AI agent journey. So that's my thought on human, non-human, and everything in between.
Yeah, that's amazing, honestly. Really interesting to hear your thoughts on that and the way you guys are going about solving some of those challenges. You've touched on the kind of like who is responsible element of non-human identities. But also I wanted to ask, I've seen online and through conversations we've had, a lot of people talking about non-human identities as quite a major security concern. And you spoke about the AI agent component as well. But are there any other reasons why non-human identities specifically are a major security concern?
So I think a couple of reasons. NHIs have proliferated in the recent years because of automation, cloud, DevOps adoption, right? And historically, they have not been under the identity umbrella. So it's a newer problem, and we don't have good tools to solve them today. So that's why they focus on NHI. Also, the quantity-wise, they outnumber human identities by somewhere between 10x to 50x, depending which data you see. But somewhere in that, it's an order of magnitude higher. But one more thing I would say is, as I just mentioned a few minutes earlier, the discovery and inventory is very different than human identities. And that's why I think it poses the initial challenge that the industry is focused on. However, as I mentioned earlier, right, there are a lot of challenges with NHIs that are very similar to human identities, and they are intertwined to begin with. So yes, NHIs have had recent focus, and it's an important problem to solve for the right reasons. But we believe that solving it in isolation will not do justice. It has to be solved together with human identities for the reasons we just discussed a few minutes ago.
Yeah, no, really interesting to hear. And final question on identity security. I know we've covered lots of areas. What innovations in identity security as a whole are you personally most excited about?
I think the way we've approached it, which is identity is a data problem. So much fragmentation in different parts of identity data that if we can ingest in a single place the way we're doing in a data lake, and then that's what AI and machine learning model can help to tease out context, tease out behavioral analysis, tease out risk, and use that to automate your operations in an intelligent fashion. That's frankly what I'm most excited about, because now we can empower your businesses to move faster, to remove manual operations, so increase agility and maintain high security. Really make identity the enabler of the business. I think that's what I'm most excited about the future of identity.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Before we hit you with our final question, it's time for something we call the quick fire round, and I'm going to hand over to Daisy for that now.
Sounds good.
What was the last movie you watched?
What was the last movie I watched? Okay, it's been a while. I think I watched a movie. I think I watched. Sorry, I'm blanking out on it. What was the last movie I watched? Oh, The Lion King.
Oh,
Yes,
the new one or the old one?
the new
The
one.
new one. Oh, amazing. Mountain peaks or bright sunny beaches?
Mountain Peaks.
What is your favorite game or sport to watch and play?
Cricket.
Nice. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Only one meal.
Mm.
You mean, is this breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or one entree? Like, what was the question?
One meal for the rest of your life. So anything.
Anything. I love lentils. So
Nice.
lentils.
Versatile. You can do a lot. And if you could live anywhere, where would it be?
Where I am, California.
Nice. What makes you laugh the most?
Pure humor, just innocent humor.
That's a good one. And what would you sing at karaoke night?
Oh, I'm the last person because if I sing, everybody will be out.
And robot. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, Ashish, you've got to answer on the karaoke night. Everyone has to give an answer. Surely there's got to be one song.
Okay, I'll just leave it to Happy Birthday to You because that's the easiest one. I know.
Yeah, that's good. Daisy, have you all finished with those, or any more you wanted to ask?
Yeah, all good. Amazing.
All
Thanks,
good.
Ashish.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. Appreciate it. Our guest final question is always the same. What one piece of advice would you give to someone entering the industry?
Right. I think go with the learning mindset. Go with an open mindset. Learn the fundamentals, the first principles. Don't get bogged down by the noise in terms of things happening so fast, the next cool thing that's happening. Again, need to learn what new is happening, absolutely, but it should be grounded in the first principles. So when something is too good to be true, usually it is, or let it settle down first. Again, focus on what's the most fundamental here. What is the real problem that we face here? What are the real ways to solve this problem? And take your time. Don't be hurried. Don't be worried about the pace with things are moving. And as I said, don't be worried about the next shiny, cool thing. Focus the fundamentals.
Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic advice. Thank you so much for your time, Ashish. It's been great to hear all your thoughts and insights. Real pleasure having you on the show. So thank you.
It's been a fun conversation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps these stories to be found and enjoyed by more people. For more information about Newco, we can be found at www.newco-group.com. That's NEUCO-group.com.